something is wrong.
Water quality in agriculture.
Nitrate
runoff. Power in politics. It's the flood crisis.
Yikes.
Yikes indeed. As the issues surrounding water quality in agriculture in Iowa become more and more overwhelming and confusing, it is hard to differentiate what people are doing to help remedy the situation. And it gets even more confusing when you try to figure out how everyday people who have no background in agriculture or environmentalism fit into the conversation. So in order to start breaking this down, the first thing we need to do is approach the issues in a non-biased way, without assigning blame or pointing fingers.
There is absolutely nothing productive that will come from you need to do this, you're a problem, from both sides.
We, as a non-farming public, needs to understand is that nobody meant for this to happen necessarily. It wasn't that somebody went out and said, oh my goodness, we're going to do everything we can to screw up the water. Farmers have been following what have been considered the best practices. And I think people get into the blame game and forget that there's a way out that doesn't put everybody out of business. There's a path forward. But I like to believe that our farmers are smart enough to figure out how to do this. They learned how to use Roundup. The first few years of doing glyphosate wasn't so good. People made mistakes. They had to learn how to do that. Now they've got that, so they know how to do that. They can also learn how to do cover crops, which pulls back the need for all those expenses, and they can take the time to do, other tasks, other kind of farming tasks. They might even be able to have time to diversify their operation. So I think there's several ways forward that are hopeful, but I think being mindful that it wasn't somebody's intention for us to get in the fix that we're at. I think it just kind of takes off some of the blame and just say, okay, here's where we are. Now how can we go forward? What can we do together?
And just as Darren stated, both sides need to stop finger pointing and fighting amongst themselves.
I went to a renewable energy symposium a few years ago, and it was one of the most frustrating things I've ever been to, because every person who got up and spoke about their preferred technology, whether it was solar or wind or what, they basically said, this is the only one, we just need to put this in everywhere. It's the only one that will work, none of the other technologies will work, was basically every presentation. And I was sitting there like, you guys, we have conventional fuels here, like with all of this money and resources and like status quo and everything. And we're down here in renewable energy throwing eggs at each other.
We also need to recall that people have been trying to solve the water quality issues in Iowa for decades, and we shouldn't disregard how much progress has already been made.
We recently concluded a project where we mapped every conservation practice you could see from LiDAR imagery from 2007 to 2010. And it was crowdsourced fund with DNR, Department of Ag, Iowa State, and the Nutrient Research Education Council to figure this out, because it has a lot of different value. But it also really puts a clear story to the amount of conservation investment that happened for those practices, because a lot of these things are kind of permanent. So when we aggregated the entire state, there was 114,000 pond dams built across the state, which is a lot of dam ponds. Then there's 88,000 miles of terraces in Iowa. That's enough to go around the earth 3.5 times. There's a ton of terraces, 12,000 miles of wascobs. So a ton of conservation that you can have on the ground. And so it really helped put a number to what was a very core value for any landowner. Like, we do this stuff. We just don't get any credit for it. And to me, that gives me a lot of hope. We did a conversion to cost share dollars to today's dollars. So it's, for just those practices we could see from LiDAR, was a $6.2 billion investment in conservation. That was done in a conservative way. And so it kind of gives you the idea, okay, well, it was a lot of different programs doing this over time and maybe a more unfocused way. But with the nutrient strategy, you have a very focused way, much more accounting to be able to track this moving forward. And if you can put in $6.2 billion in those types of practices that you can verify in the landscape through this imagery, to me it says, if we did it once before, there's no reason we can't do it again. But more on the nitrogen side, obviously, is a big focus, and that maybe we can do it faster because we've learned so much from the past that can help inform the future, and now we have a lot more data to boot So that should give us a lot more tools moving forward to be able to achieve something similar but faster moving today.
That brings up a good point. What do we even want Iowa to look like in 50 years?
I guess what I hope that Iowa looks like is that there is a balance. We are heavy agriculture, economic state, but there also needs to be a balance with our environmental resources in the state as well, and those are very important that we need to protect. And yeah, 50 years, I definitely think that we can do it. I think back of how the soil and water conservation districts were formed in the Dust Bowl era, and how far we've come since then, and how far we've come since no-till, and how hard that was adopted. And now it's just, a lot of it's pretty mainstream. A lot of people do no-till, and now it feels like cover crops is the new kind of buzzword. But I feel that will also be just common practice as we get into it. I do feel like we're in an urgent state. We can't put this behind anymore, and that this needs to be on the forefront of our legislators, and that we need to take action.
Since Kate brought up politics, let's talk about how water quality does not need to be solely a political discussion.
Water quality is so hard to talk about in our state, and we have many experts across the state studying water quality, and lots of science data. And it's unfortunate that it has to be so political when there's so much science backing what's going on.
Water quality is not a political discussion. It is absolutely not. Anybody who has an understanding of anything that's going on when it comes to water quality, this is all about science. This is about data. This is looking at numbers. Well, levels are here, people get sick here. So how do we balance that out? And that's all the discussion really needs to involve. But unfortunately, it's taken another direction here in Iowa. And how do we back that up? This is not an agricultural versus a city dweller discussion. This is how do we come together and pay for this, first of all, so we're not a burden on farmers. How can we do this so we're not taking huge amounts of land out of production? Farmers aren't making any money the way it is. This is an industry that is operating on almost nothing. So how do we fix that? How do we as a community, and it's both sides, come together, have discussions? But when those discussions happen, it's one side or the other. Those discussions are never happening together. And I think that's what we have to be willing to do is have those discussions.
And as hard as it is to get both sides to come together to talk about these issues, there's another entire group of people that need to be involved.
And so most farmers that you talk to are not getting the economic outcomes that they want and they feel they deserve. And if you talk to the public, a great number of the people in the public are not getting the environmental outcomes that they feel that they want and they deserve. And so neither one of these sides is getting the outcomes that they want. And so the question that becomes in my mind is, who is getting the outcomes that they want? Those are the people that need to be a part of the discussion, and those are the people that are not part of the discussion. And so the people that are getting the outcomes that they want are the ones that are benefiting from low commodity prices, which generally means, business. And we totally let them off the hook when it comes to water quality. And so I think it's unfair to make farmers shoulder this whole burden of fixing this, because, when you look at their capital investment, what that is relative to their income from year to year, it's, their income is not that large. And so I think if we're going to talk about conversations, we need to start thinking about who has not been part of the conversation.
So by this point in the video, you may be saying to yourself, wow, this issue is so huge. Can an individual really make a difference when it comes to such a systemic issue?
You know, communities making a difference started with individuals making a difference. And if you feel like something needs to happen, that you can't rally a community until you're trying it and doing it and encouraging and inspiring other people. So I do feel like every little bit makes a difference. And especially in today's age of technology, what you do can really inspire and help so many people. You know, first of all, your neighbors that see what you're doing and how much you care and the value that you assign to your land and your impact on the land, but then can go far beyond, depending on how you outreach or who else catches wind, or maybe I'm not impacting very much in my little area, but I can call up so-and-so, and we're little satellites all over the state that are starting to do things and are starting to influence people in our communities and have the support of this, you know, patchwork community all over, and each hopefully are creating some interest in our own areas. So maybe it's wishy-washy and wishful thinking, but my connection, I guess, is that, you know, if you have this dream and this vision and a passion, start it, do it yourself. And I do kind of feel like if the community is going to come, they will come, but you have to start somewhere.
Everybody has a different skill set. And I think what we as individuals have to try to figure out how to do is how do we take the skill set that we have and use that for doing something positive. Some people are very willing to write emails. Some people are very willing to go out and have discussions and volunteer. Some people, you know, you may have a background in law, you might have a background in marketing, but what we have to try to figure out is how do we take what each of us can do as an individual and use that to help build a voice.
So where should someone start if they're interested in helping to improve Iowa's water quality?
First step would be knowledgeable. Second is reflect on how we can live our own life. And then the third step is probably be socially engaged and discuss these topics with our neighbors, our family, across the board, just to really improve the knowledge across the board. And then from that, it'd be nice if people would actually do action and maybe volunteer in the community, volunteer in organizations. But I'm a simple guy. I realize people are busy and such. So start with improving our own knowledge and then taking greater responsibility for our own actions and then moving out from there.
Those of us who work in water quality or agriculture, sometimes we take for granted that everybody is thinking about food and farming as we do. But if you go outside of that bubble of the people you work with and have a conversation about agriculture or food, they probably could be a lot more informed than they are. So they could have a lot of impact by first learning about our food system, our farm system, our environment here in Iowa, figuring out what matters to them, and then having conversations about that can have a good impact, but then also purchasing what they agree with and then doing some policy work. It's really easy to do policy work even though it seems intimidated. So individuals can have a lot of impact, and the more individuals having impact create that community you were talking about. So I do think that we all have a role we can play and that we should play. I mean, we live in the state, we all eat the food here, we depend on the natural resources of the state, so I think it's our responsibility to participate in shaping the food and farm system how we would like to see it.
So I would think just at a base level, be informed and use whatever talents or whatever energy you have available.
And you don't have to be a lawyer to run for office. If
Yeah.
you are interested in this space and you want to make a difference, you know, get informed, get active. It all, you know, starts at the grassroots level.
Yeah, become a planning and zoning commissioner,
Exactly.
run for city council,
Yeah.
Run for school board,
Yeah.
you know, any of those.
Get that experience.
You know,
Leverage your leadership capacity that you would have.
To learn how to see with new eyes, to look for things that are maybe not, they may be common, but not normal. And I think that's a big difference. So I think anybody can learn to see what's really going on and really understand it from a different level. So for example, in the spring, you may go past one field and there's a lot of dust kicking up behind the tractor. And maybe it hasn't been dry. maybe it's, just a normal spring. And you'll see a lot of dust behind the tractor. Like, interesting. And you go another mile or so, and there's another tractor, and there's a lot of dust kicking up behind the tractor. And another one, and another one. And pretty soon you say, oh, that's, it must be dry out. Well, what everybody's experiencing is the fact that the soil is so degraded that it's pulverized, and you end up with a lot more dust in the air that you wouldn't if the soil was healthy. So you assume that that's normal, but really all it is common, and it's not common in a good way. And so having the understanding of what's common and what is normal, I think, and in a good sign, is a refinement of our observations that anybody can learn to do.
And in the end, what we need to remember is that we are all Iowans. And as we all live in this great state, we need to come together in order to address these issues affecting our water quality.
We're really all in this together. We're all in this together in terms of having to drink or swim in or not be able to swim in the water. We're all in this together in terms of any other environmental degradation, and we're all in this together economically.
I mean, I think we all have things in common. We all drink water, and so we all need clean water to drink, and I don't think we should be blaming anybody else. It's all of us need to work on this kind of thing together, so it's not urban versus rural. It's, there's things everybody can do to improve.
And I know it is hard to be in the environmental or agricultural space and feel that all we do is take one step forward and two back. But it is important for us all to remember to stay hopeful.
Our executive director always says, don't just complain about things, offer a solution. I think it can be really easy to fall in the trap of feeling cynical about things and feeling burned out and feeling like the scale of these problems is immense, and so feeling sort of nihilistic about the whole endeavor. I think remaining hopeful is key to doing this kind of work and to participating in this space.
We need to focus on our similarities instead of our differences. We are all humans. We all need water to survive. And you know what? We also all deserve the beauty that clean water provides.
We deserve to have beauty around us and to have peaceful places and have nature. We deserve to be able, our kids to be able to play in a creek or, mess around in the woods somewhere. All of that we're organisms too. We're biological critters, and we evolved in nature and of nature, and we belong to it. So having that available to people has always been necessary.